There we go. Miller Lite. Hell
Had to
yeah.
do a Miller Lite. Yeah, change it up every once in a while. I mean, it was also on sale, so But
Yeah.
I'm not a beer discriminator, but yeah, stacking Dennys.
Hell yeah. Welcome back to a season finale episode of Stacking Dennys. I'm Jordan McAbee of RotoBaller, my co-host Nick Giffen of the Action Network. Joey Logano is our 2024 NASCAR Cup Series champion, holds off a late charging Ryan Blaney. In the closing laps at Phoenix, William Byron comes home third out of the championship contenders, and then Reddick a distant fourth. The controversies here. When these playoffs, or as these playoffs kept going, I said I was only going to have an issue. I could potentially have an issue if Joey Logano was the champion, and obviously that's happened. This has stirred up a lot of talk on Twitter, talk in the media, whether this championship was legitimate. And, here's what I'm going to say. Joey Logano and that Penske team, Penske especially, have broken the system. So we saw Matt Kenseth break the system. We saw Jimmy Johnson break the system. That's why these changes happen over the years. Penske has done that. They have figured out these playoffs. They've figured out what they need to do to get to the final race, and then they're there, they win it. The question now is, does NASCAR have the balls to change things up? Elton Sawyer said this week, I believe, that it's something that they are going to look into in the offseason. Obviously, ideas have been thrown around from various media people on different ways we can do this. Even drivers have said some ideas. Brad Keselowski tweeted that he thinks a lot of big changes are going to be happening over the offseason. But before we dive deeper into that, let's talk about this race a little bit. Christopher Bell dominated a good portion of it before Joey Logano. There was that late restart that I fully believe Christopher Bell kind of just gave up. He had the best car all day, and then that restart happened, and I think he just let the championship guys battle it out from there. And like I said, we saw Blaney have a great long run car. Saw him catch Joey Logano in the closing laps of this race. And I'll say this: I know people are excited on how it was a pretty good finish, all things considered. Logano or Blaney's catching Logano, Willie pass him, Willie not. Logano holds him off. I'll say this: if that race is 5 laps longer, I think we're getting a lot more complaints, because it was the typical can't pass at a short track, but the timing was so perfect that it didn't look that bad, because Blaney caught him only with a couple laps, and then Logano just, aero blocked him and didn't let him get by. But I think if that's 5 laps longer, I don't think Blaney doesn't get by him. I think there's a lot more complaints. But overall,
I agree and disagree with you. Sorry to interrupt. I'm complaining about that exact thing, the aero blocking. And Blaney got to him with 20 to go. He was less than a second down, and then he never passed him. I actually think he was close enough the whole time to just be aero blocked, for 20 laps or something like that. I actually don't even think he needed 5 more laps. It was the car. You couldn't pass. Blaney was clearly faster, and for some reason, with 20 to go, he was a second behind, and with 0 to go, he was 7/10 or 5/10 behind, right? At that point, he was just stalled out behind Logano. I don't think you needed the extra 5 laps to complain about that. I agree what you're saying in that I think more people would be talking about that.
Yeah.
But to me, it was so evident. It was so obvious that it was just, you get to another car of the same caliber, same tires, and you just couldn't pass. But Blaney was better, and it's an indictment on the car. But go ahead with the rest of your stuff, because obviously I have a lot to respond to as well.
Yeah, it was an interesting weekend overall. Blaney obviously had that thing in qualifying. He ended up starting 17th, which made the race more interesting. He had to come through traffic. Reddick, I don't think anybody really expected him to be a contender, and he never really was. He had that one good restart. That's about it. But then, like I said, Logano pulled away. Byron was there all day, but I never really considered him as like a legitimate threat. Like it was Blaney or Logano all day. And watching the live odds, because DraftKings had live championship odds up all race. And, they were constantly going back and forth. If you were live betting that, you could have bet, you could have constantly kept betting them and had some fun with that. But overall, I think that was a typical Phoenix race, and it's definitely, there's a lot to talk about as far as this championship format goes, and whether, do you think this is a quote unquote legitimate championship? That's the main thing that everybody's talking about.
Sure. Well, let me address another point you made, and I both agree with and somewhat disagree with. Penske has this format figured out to a degree. Yes, Joey Logano broke the format, but he got lucky that he even got into the round of 8. Let's not forget that they didn't break the format that way, because without Alex Bowman's disqualification, we're not talking about them breaking the format.
But Blaney would have won if Logano.
Sure, but we're not talking about Joey Logano breaking the format.
No, I
say Blaney would not have broken the format. No, but what you're saying is Matt Kenseth broke the format, Jimmy Johnson broke the format, and now Joey Logano has broken the format. Nobody would be complaining about the format being broken if Logano had never made the round of 8 and Ryan Blaney was champion. We all be like, that's a legitimate champion. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Joey Logano broke the format is what you're talking about, and to your point, Penske has figured the format out, like the Jimmy Johnson had figured out the 10 race playoff format before the 2014 changes. But Joey Logano would not have been in the round of 8 without disqualification.
Yeah.
And again, is fuel mileage figuring out the format, right? Like, he won on fuel mileage. That's just figuring out 2 individual races. Phoenix, though, they have figured out, right? Like, they have Phoenix figured out, and that's the most important thing. If you're going for a championship, you need Phoenix figured out, or you're not winning the championship, right? Like, Team Penske has Phoenix absolutely figured out. And so I don't know if they have the whole format figured out. Joey Logano has not been as good as Ryan Blaney all year. He won Atlanta, which is what it is. He won on fuel mileage, a race he never should have won at Vegas, and still ended up winning because of fuel mileage, but was not the best car. It was a back half of the top 10 car. To get into the playoffs, he won the craziest fuel mileage save I've ever seen in my whole lifetime of watching NASCAR. So I don't know if they, if they have it all figured out, but it certainly worked out for Team Penske, and they definitely have Phoenix figured out.
Yeah, and it also brings up the point, which a lot of people have clamored for, is it time to start moving this championship race? If we're going to stick with this format, is it time to move the championship race?
It's got to rotate. It has to rotate.
Yeah.
And then your point about, is this a legitimate championship? You and I both said if Joey Logano wins this, we're not going to say it's not a legitimate championship, because he won it under the rules that are the rules. He won it. Right. It's legitimate in that under the rules, yeah, he won it. But there isn't a racing series in the world, in all of history, where a driver like Joey Logano would be the champion, except in this particular circumstance. And I think when you think about every racing series everywhere in the world, in all of history, and this is what we get, I think that's fucked up. And again, I said, I love the playoff format. I've mentioned it weeks in and weeks out here. And I said the only way I won't love it is if Logano's champion, and Logano's champion. And then the other way I wouldn't love it is with what happened at Martinsville. So right now things are broken. NASCAR has a stain from this year, from the playoff portion of this year. And there's a few stains on NASCAR in general. The racing on short, flat tracks, not great. There was a time I tweeted during the race, we went 15 minutes without a pass.
Yep. It was ridiculous. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
I think it was Jeff Gluck, tweeting a joke about how he was falling asleep. Oh, green flag pit stops to wake me up or something,
Right.
Lowest ratings in the past decade or whatever from TV ratings I just saw today for the championship, or tied lowest, the same as last year. But this format is supposed to be, they called it, the Game 7 or whatever, and it's just not producing the ratings. So if the format is what you wanted for ratings and it's not producing the ratings, let's get back to something that we are crowning a champion that isn't finishing, 12.8 or whatever it is, some crazy ass 17 point, whatever it was. I think it was average finish on the season. Worst of all time, and not even close to second worst of all time. I crunched. People always talk about how Kyle Busch was an illegitimate champion in 2015, but I disagree. Kyle Busch won 4 races before the playoffs started. 4. That's more than Joey Logano won all season.
Yep.
Well, I guess it's tied with how many Joey Logano won all season. But he won them all before the playoffs, and then he won Homestead, so he won 5 races in the year, in which he missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 races from his broken leg. So in 25 races, he won 5 of them. That's 20% of all races. If he had won 20% of all races in a 36 race season, we'd be talking about 7 or 8 race win season for Kyle Busch. His playoff average finish that year was 9.8. Joey Logano's playoff average finish this year was 13.9. 4 full places worse than Kyle Busch. And a lot of that, again, was some good fortune from Joey Logano, an Alex Bowman disqualification, a fuel mileage win. But Kyle Busch's playoff run that year in 2015 was pretty crazy. He had a 9th, a DNF, a 2nd, a 20th, but then the very end of his season, 5-11, 5-4, 4-1. All top fives other than an 11th, right?
Yeah.
And 11th isn't that bad. It's still better than Joey Logano's average playoff finish this year. So,
that's interesting.
I don't know if Logano's illegitimate, again, because he won it under the format he won it under, but it's certainly a stain on NASCAR.
It's interesting you bring up average finish, average playoff finish with Logano. Would we be having the same conversation if Tyler Reddick won it? Because Tyler Reddick did not perform in the playoffs.
No, he didn't. But that's the other thing about this format is it lets you not perform.
Right. Yeah.
As long as you win.
I just don't
win in each round.
I don't think we'd be having this conversation. I don't think people would be talking about it if Reddick won it.
Sure, but Reddick's regular season finish average was so deserving.
There's that aspect of it. Yeah, of course.
And it's the same thing. Like people are like, don't compare it to stick and ball sports, but the whole point is NASCAR is saying they want their Game 7 moment, which is a stick and ball sport. Yeah. So if we compare it to stick and ball sports, we're saying Reddick was not the Patriots that year, but they're a strong NFL team that kind of underperformed, but kind of lucked their way into the Super Bowl and then got destroyed in the Super Bowl. That's a normal outcome in sports. I don't think, but if that team won the Super Bowl, nobody would be complaining about that either. So no, I don't think people would complain about Reddick. It's the notion of Joey Logano getting his way in the way he did, because we're talking not just wild card, but like outside the wild card, right? With winning you're in on a crazy fuel mileage race where you didn't finish top 16 in points. Then you won your way into the round of 12. You disqualificationed your way into the round of 8. You won your way into the round of 4 on another fuel mileage race. And then you won the final race. And to their credit, they deserved to win that final race. Blaney was better at the end. Blaney was the better car at the whole race. But they still deserve, right? Nobody says if you're the second best car, you don't deserve a win. Joey Logano was probably the second best car all race. He deserved the win, right? He deserved to win Phoenix. It's just the 35 races preceding that is the issue.
And I also think, I'm not defending, Logano's championship or any of this, but one thing that people have to remember, because I know like they're bringing up stats and they're, who should be champion, who should have been the Final Four, whatever. I forget the number, but I want to say it's like 70% of the time the fastest car doesn't win the race in NASCAR.
Yeah.
Like it is ridiculously high that the fastest car doesn't actually win the race. And, taking that over a season-long thing, you're going to have situations like this. Is this year's egregious on who's the champion, how he got there, and how bad they actually performed? Absolutely. Like, I don't think anybody can actually defend that Joey Logano had a good season by any means, other than the fact that he does have the wins. He would have won. I will give him this. He would have won Richmond as well. If Austin Dillon didn't dump him, he would have won Richmond.
That's true.
And I think a lot of people are forgetting that.
Well, okay. The only other difference is, would that situation have been different because Logano didn't have a win? Would he have even been in that same spot? Would things have played out differently? Right. So I agree with you there, but also we don't know how things. Maybe the team takes a different gamble and they're not even in that spot.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. There's always that. Yeah. Exactly. But
I do agree with you there.
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, it's a black eye on the sport, and this season especially, just it's felt like haymaker after haymaker has been landing on the sport of NASCAR. Elton Sawyer came out and said that they don't have an officiating problem. When that motherfucker's been talking to the media for like one every 3 races this year.
We were saying every other race the second half of the season. Yeah, it seemed like.
And I don't know if they're oblivious. They don't want to admit that they have a problem, but they have problems, and these need to be addressed. And the more that they continue to seemingly turn a blind eye to all this is frustrating. And it doesn't give me hope that they're actually going to do anything this offseason to kind of curb this.
Yeah, I don't have faith. We've heard they're looking at changes. The idea we talked about last week on this podcast that you said, I think it was Kevin Harvick said on his podcast. I saw that mentioned on Twitter today by one of the media members. But it was something just like the regular season champion gets into the round of 8 or 12 or something. But that's never not been an issue anyway. And so I saw some good quotes of that, like, well, we're not fixing anything because that part is not broken. That's not the broken part, right?
Yeah.
The broken part is the Martinsville stuff, and then a guy that, let's be real, probably didn't deserve to be champion this year is now champion this year. And I'm not saying it's illegitimate. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to and that he's not a good driver, not a good team. It's just that team and driver didn't perform this year at a championship level outside of 2 or 3 races.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, that's the format. You only need to really perform in about 5 races in the season, and
which is a problem because the New England Patriots, even if they go to the playoffs, they're not going to the playoffs because they won 4 games that year. Right. They're going to the playoffs because they won 7, 8, 9, 10 or more games that year, right? Like, I don't think an NFL team has gone to the playoffs winning less than 7 games in history. Maybe once or twice. But even 7 games is a losing record, and that's happened very few times. My point is, Joey Logano performed at a championship level in a very small handful of races.
Yeah.
To the point where in any other stick and ball sport, he would not have made the playoffs in that respective sport.
Here's a question for you. Do they need to cut the field smaller and not allow these fringe championship caliber guys to make their way through? Like, I saw one idea I saw today was, like, I think it was like the top 8 is good, and then like everybody else basically in the first round battles each other to get to the next round to try to eliminate the Harrison Burtons, the Chase Briscoes who get in on a lucky win.
How about this? Like you said, the top whatever is good on points, they get in automatically. It doesn't matter how many wins you have or don't. And maybe it's the top 8. I don't know. But those guys are usually winning anyway. If you're 9th through 16th in the standings, a win gets you in. And if you're outside of the top 16 in the standings, 2 wins to get in.
That would
solve a lot of things.
That would solve, yeah. That would also, I mean, Daytona wouldn't be fun.
Then you don't get it wouldn't be fun, except there may be a few guys, your Daniel Suarez's, your Chris Buschers, or whoever, those types of guys who have 1 win and need that second to get in. Instead of having the whole field wrecking each other trying to get 1 win, you have maybe 3 guys that are crazy aggressive, and there's less team-based strategy. I guess that maybe there's, in some ways, less and in some ways more because they're all focused on getting that 1 guy in, but just move Daytona ahead 3 other races, and then it's not so much of a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just an idea, right? I don't think it's going to be immediate where we come up with a perfect solution, but I think there needs to be more stringent ways to get in, either cut the playoff size down again and, but I still want to have ways for your Harrison Burtons to get in. If he wins 2 races, he should be in, right? Like, to me, if you win 2 races and all these other schmucks haven't, I'm fine with putting you in. 1 fluky Daytona win. And again, I was fine with it. I'm still fine with it because a guy like Harrison Burton's not going to win the title anyway. But it's the Joey Logano types, right? Exactly the guy we're talking. Like we were just saying, Daniel Suarez or whatever. Joey Logano would have been a perfect example of like you have to win Daytona now to get in because you only have 1 win, not 2, and you're outside the top 16 in points. That would have prevented Joey Logano from going to the playoffs.
You know what's interesting though is the number of people that don't have multiple wins on a year. I mean, there's only 5 drivers that have two or more wins this year.
Yeah,
6.
but what I'm saying again is if you're in the top 16, you only need 1, right?
Yeah.
So it's just outside of the top 16 getting multiple wins. It would have been in the regular season, nobody.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I hope there's at least some kind of change. Like I don't think they can go another season without.
There has to be something.
Yeah, there needs to be some sort of effort here to do something, and I think there's been enough backlash, both from fans and in the media that I think we're going to end up seeing that. But
I agree, and reading the tea leaves from the media stuff I saw today, there will be. It sounds like there's the effort is going to be to make some changes for 2025, but there may not be the real wholesale changes that people want until 2026.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows? But who knows? There's a long off season to figure out something good. Who knows?
That's true. Chris Buescher finishes 17th in points.
It's a big one. Was
by
very
a
much
healthy
aided,
margin.
very much aided by Bubba and Ross getting penalties at Martinsville.
Yep, absolutely.
50-point penalties, right? Bubba Wallace would be 2 points behind without that 50-point penalty, and may have changed how he raced Phoenix.
He had a damn good car at Phoenix.
He did. He actually played wingman for a while there for a couple of the Toyota drivers. I know Jim Sonis and I were talking about how good he looked in the race. Fucking good car. And he just ended up like once he got behind, I can't remember if it was Hamlin or Bell or somebody. I think it was Hamlin. He just intentionally didn't pass him, right?
That Twitter account, I think it's like Racing Analytics or something that does the median.
It was Reddit. Duh. I'm done. Reddit. But yeah, go ahead. Racing Analytics.
They do the median lap and then where they would finish if it was all green. Bubba was like the 3rd best car. Like
yeah. Oh, he had a fucking good car.
And that's starting. He started what, like 20 something? Like
yeah.
That car was so good. It's something to keep an eye or just to remember next Phoenix race. That car was fucking good.
And again, if the points had mattered, I know they weren't awarding stage points in the final race, but if he hadn't had that 50-point penalty, he probably would have pressed harder for 2 extra spots, right? Look who finished right in front of him was 2 Toyota teammates. He could have forced the issue and tried to grab 17th in the standings, which I believe still comes with a monetary bonus for the whole team, the organization.
Yeah, so good end of the year there for Bubba. Buescher had another great car at Phoenix again after he didn't show any speed all weekend and then turned it on in the race itself.
Bubba had a better average finish than Reddick, I think, in the playoffs.
Did he really?
I believe so. I'd have to do the math, but I'm just eyeballing the finishing spots here and eyeball test. I think he probably had a average finish than Reddick. I mean, Reddick had 6, 27, 20, 25, 20, 11, 36, 1, 34, 6, right? Like, that's a terrible fucking playoff. Yet like you said, he made the finals because he didn't really need to do much in the first round. barely made it through the second round, won in the third round despite 2 other DNFs, and then was the worst of the 4 at Phoenix.
Wild.
Yeah.
Last race for Stuart Haas. Did you hear about the drama that happened, or the radio transmission after the race there?
No.
So they
I have
were
no idea what you're
all.
talking about.
So on Gregson's on radio, they were they're trying to get all 4 cars together to take a picture for like the last race, and they're like, "Oh, like the 4's next to you," and then Gregson's like, "Well, where's the 41?" And they're like, "Oh, the 41's already on pit road." And then Gregson's like, "Let me show you my shocked face." Like, I
Wow.
honestly
No, I
think
hadn't
those
heard
guys hated each other. Just like, the different, like the team meeting thing where Priest didn't know about it.
I
And
think
then
it was the 3 of them were finding each other. They just hated Priest, right?
yeah, man.
Because I saw a picture. The only thing I saw was a picture of 3 of the 4 Stuart Haas drivers walking back, like on the track or something, and it was non-Priest 3, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it was just an anti-Priest thing. I don't know. And then I saw a picture of like Brad Keselowski walking out of the track with Priest or something, patting him on the back or whatever, with I think Buescher there or something. So I don't know. I can't remember. I'm sure I'm like making some of this up in my head because it was just quick Twitter scrolling, but I definitely saw Priest and Keselowski picture, and I saw the 3 other Stuart Haas drivers picture.
And that's the rumors that Priest is going to RFK next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Obviously Briscoe's going to JGR.
Keselowski said there's going to be some announcements in the next week or 2. So
yep.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, everybody knows what it is.
Right.
But Briscoe's going to JGR. Barry's going to Wood Brothers. Noah Gregson's going to Front Row. Still no word on what Zane Smith's going to do, or Corey LaJoie.
Or Chandler Smith for Xfinity. I mean, he's pretty much out of a ride. You get a guy that's competing for an Xfinity title and can't even get a ride. That's the state of the sport right now.
Yep. Doesn't have that money. Let's see what else is here. I was thinking about this today, or trying to. What is your most memorable or top 3 moments of the 2024 season?
I mean, there's no doubt Atlanta and Kansas finishes, right? I mean, those are easily the first 2 I think of. Those finishes were incredible, but it wasn't just the finishes. Both of those races were compelling from start to finish. It was good stuff. But I think the third thing for me wasn't one moment, but it was a handful of moments in a short order. And it's the third thing that pops in my head is there was a bunch of flips in the midseason, right? And a car spins out and he just flips. We had 3 or 4 flips in a 5-race span. I know Tyler Reddick got on his lid at Vegas, I think it was. No, yeah, Vegas, you were there.
Vegas.
But even before that, Michigan, somebody got on their lid. Daytona, I believe. Yeah. So there was a bunch of flips, which I think was memorable. I'm sure that's probably maybe not the moment you were looking for, but certainly Atlanta and Kansas have to be moments 1 and 2 in whatever order you want to put them in. That was pretty crazy stuff. I'm trying to look through the season just to see like, is there anything like that jogs my memory? I'm just doing a quick scan of the season.
Homestead finish
was awesome. I thought Chicago Street Course was a really good race. SVG ended up in the tire barriers, and then there was 3-4 Toyotas chasing Alex Bowman, and he held him off on old tires. We thought Joey Hand had a chance to win that race. Like, I mean, that was fun. I always, I remember controversy and excitement, and to me, controversy, just teammate controversy Coda, right? If Ty Gibbs actually lets Christopher Bell pass, Christopher Bell wins Coda.
Yep.
Instead, Byron wins comfortably. Just like that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. I'm weird in that, like, you're probably going to say, like, these are my top 3 moments, and I should have been like, yeah, those should have been in my top 3 as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and my point here is, because I was thinking about this today. There's been so many this year. I mean, Austin Dillon at Richmond, the end of Richmond.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, just ping ponging everybody out of the way.
Yeah, the Bristol tire debacle, first race.
Debacle, but then people wanted that to happen again because the second Bristol race was so terrible.
Yep. Darlington was a great race, with Briscoe winning that one.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I hate it. A race cost me. What did I bet? It was minus 1,000. I bet 2 units. Yeah, so that race cost me like $500. Just on that bet, I should say.
The end of Watkins Glen, when Buescher won. Those are the weeks. So like, as far as finishes, like,
that Buescher win was crazy.
Yeah, the Buescher win, like, to me, like, the finishes are there and I remember them, and then there's like the betting aspects of races that I remember. Like, I'll never forget Daytona, McDowell winning the pole. Like, that probably my biggest day betting wise ever.
I was freaking taking my cat to the vet and couldn't get that line. I mean, I got a slightly less good line, but I just couldn't get down on it because I was taking my cat to the vet. So yeah, but that was amazing. You know what's something that's memorable for me that I didn't even think about? That Richmond race that Austin Dillon did win. You know what else happened that race?
Blaney beat Logano for the second time in 18 races.
We had the option tire. Remember Daniel Suarez put on the option tire mid-race and just blowing the doors off the whole field?
Yep.
That was cool. That was really cool to see.
That was definitely an advancement.
It didn't work as well at North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race, but on a track with tire wear.
Yep.
Oh my God. And then it faded faster like we expected. That was cool to see. I thought that was neat. And we got some of that at Martinsville. We just didn't have, like, okay, we got the soft tire at Martinsville in the playoffs, but why not give us last year's tire or earlier this year's tire too, and let us have 2 different tire strategies at Martinsville, right?
Yep.
I mean, that could have been awesome.
That was another memorable thing as well. Martinsville, all the rubber on the side of the race cars, I thought was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was just cool to see.
Yeah. Well, and just the blocking. I mean, that was a memorable moment, whether it was a good or a bad one, the finish to that race.
Mm-hmm.
Harrison Burton winning. I mean, that's a memorable moment.
Yeah. I'm going through the list now.
Plus, okay, here's something that, again, I was thinking about how bad a year I had, right, in terms of betting and all that stuff. But there's things in there that just, like, aren't tracked. Like winning a 100-1 bet on the top 10 round robin. That's just not tracked.
That was fun.
Which I tracked as a full 4-car parlay just to have it tracked. But I put in the pick note round robin these, right? And winning one of those being a 100, I think it was 100 or 110-1 bet on that, right? So that doesn't show in my Action Network app stats. But obviously I bet it. I mean, we both talked about it all week, showed the screenshot, drove out to fucking Arizona to bet it, all that stuff, I mean, yeah. But that was a memorable moment, was that race, because there was all 4 of those cars that we round robin top 10 were still in the lead lap for that final finish.
Yep.
There was a chance we could have won another $1 million.
One more wreck and that could have hit very easily.
Yeah.
Speaking of betting, man, sportsbooks hated Christopher Bell this last weekend at Phoenix. FanDuel especially, like, they were holding him out at 8-1, 9-1 pre-race, in race. Even when he was, like, running second, running fastest laps, they still had him 8-1. So I just kept, like, live betting him. And
Mhm.
shout out to FanDuel, because once he pissed down his leg on that one restart and fell back to fifth, I just cashed them all out. Which, shout out to FanDuel for letting me cash out. But yeah, that was just interesting that they were not respecting Bell at all last
That's
weekend.
weird.
I think a lot of people were kind of overlooking him because he was only 19% owned in the big GPP on DraftKings. Like,
He was a weird one, right? Like, I wanted to write him up, but at the same time, I couldn't write him up because I just figured he'd be really highly owned, and then he wasn't.
right. Yeah. I wrote him up as cash. I'm playing Bell.
Oh,
No
I
matter
would have
what.
too. I would have too, but I also wrote up Blaney, and I was like, I just thought Bell was obvious. And I'm the mindset type where, like, yeah, cash, I'll write up the obvious plays. And
Yep.
then, but tournaments, like, I don't write up the obvious tournament plays because I think they're obvious, right? So
Mhm.
I'm not saying guy who's 30% owned is a bad play. It's just like we already all know that. And so I always end up writing these more obscure ones. So my tournament plays always look worse. But my
Yeah.
whole goal of writing up a tournament play is to, find the guy that isn't going to be as highly owned as he should be. I don't
Yeah.
care if a guy's 28% owned and ends up in the optimal lineup. And because to me, it's like, well, duh, he should have been played anyway in your lineups. But I also overestimate, I guess, the average player. Maybe not this point in the season, because the people playing it this late in the season are still the ones who are good at it. But, and I think that's where maybe like you and Stevie have done something different. Like, these are my core plays, but the core plays are like your chalk. And
Yeah.
I just hate writing up chalk
Mhm.
because they're chalk. Which is fine. It's fine for cash games again, but I can't write up every cash game play either. I'm not supposed to give out a full cash game lineup.
Yeah, I'm like you. Like, when I do my article every week, it almost like pains me to write my core plays because they are the chalk plays. Like, I don't want to talk about them. I want to talk about.
We all know they're chalk.
Yeah, I want to talk about the other ones. So, like, I do it because I have to, but I don't like it. But that's because you and
I just don't do that. That's how I've always been. I've never been a guy that's going to write up the obvious plays.
Yeah, and it's because you and I are so, like, we're very contrarian players. So, like, that's how our mindset works. We don't, like, everyone's on. Like,
I don't
Blaney,
think anybody needs me to tell you that Ryan Blaney is going to be good at Phoenix this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
or Christopher Bell is probably going to be good at Phoenix this weekend.
But then I think about
this weekend we did, but
yeah. I don't understand that. Like I said,
that's surprising.
19% owned, and he was underpriced. Like, I think people overestimated or like overlooked practice, because like obviously the 20 wasn't great in practice, but the Toyotas were fine, so I wasn't worried. But yeah,
shout outs to Denny Hamlin for sucking ass.
He was fine there for a while, and then his pit crew lost him like 8 spots on that one, and then I feel like he just gave up after that.
He also just never got beyond like 5th or whatever it was, 6th, and he had such a good car in practice, and just I think Denny Hamlin is getting Martin Truexy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It happens. Kyle Busch, same thing. Kevin Harvick, end of his career, same thing. Like, these guys, they get older. Jimmy Johnson, right? They get older and they're just not as good. And I think we need to pay attention to the fact that Denny Hamlin won 3 races the first 11 or whatever it was, start the year. None the second half of the year. How many races did he dominate the second half of the year? 1. He led the most laps at the Richmond race that, Joey Logano should have won. Austin Dillon punted people, tires, all that. So we need to pay attention to the fact that Denny Hamlin did not have a great second half of the year.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, because it's like, I can't remember the last time that we actually talked about like Hamlin as a legitimate threat to win, like it's always like his odds could be decent this week, but it was never like Hamlin's going to definitely.
I bet him 28 to 1 to win Phoenix, but
so did I.
Yeah, but that's because my model had him plus 2650, and I was using my Championship 4 model where it gives extra weight to the Championship 4, and I was like, if there's no magic for the Championship 4 or whatever, then it's even better. But at 26 or at 28 to 1, and I'm have 26 and a half, I'm like, yeah, I'll sprinkle that. But and he had a good car, but then he just stalled in like 5th place, and from there it was just pain. So I don't know what to make of it. And FedEx is leaving. They have a lawsuit going on with the team that he owns. A lot of going on in Denny Hamlin's life.
What's the age where we see the decline?
It's like typically the peak goes until about 38, and then there's a little drop off till around 41, and then beyond 41 there's more of a drop off. It's very dependent on specific drivers, but that's just if you take like averages. So Denny Hamlin's right at
going to be 44 next year.
He's already beyond the secondary drop off. Yeah.
And you know,
I think we're starting to see it.
Yeah. And obviously, like the next gen car has a lot to do with this, but 2 of the last 3 years, his worst average finishes of his career. No, well, since like 2013.
Yeah. There was that one bad year, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, plus let's think about it. I mean, this isn't a knock on Denny Hamlin. This is almost a praise of Denny Hamlin. He's got a lot going on.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a lot going on. There's lawsuits, team owner, but, you know, still trying to be a driver, being a parent. FedEx is leaving, as I talked about, so there's some uncertainty around what will a sponsorship situation be for next year. There's a lot going on in that man's life. That doesn't make things easier. It only makes things harder. So in a way, I'm, you know, kind of making excuses for him. But a lot of that's not going to go away next year. So will the performance get better? I don't know.
That FedEx aspect is very, because who are his sponsors? I mean, he has that like Mavis tire.
On the state of the sport, though, too, right?
Oh yeah.
Chandler Smith can't get a ride. Denny Hamlin's losing FedEx, who's been with him his whole fucking Cup career. We saw the same thing with Jimmy Johnson the last few years, right? Like Lowe's left, and then he's out of the sport a couple years later. Not a whole sport, but you know what I mean. Full-time Cup driver. We don't see these loyal sponsors anymore, and to lose another one is not good. We still have Pennzoil, right, for Team Penske, specifically Logano, but Team Penske as a whole, right? They'll have them as secondaries on some of the other cars. But
Napa on Chase is pretty good, or constant, and then like Hendrick cars on Kyle Larson, but that's, you know, that's the same.
Yeah. But I'm talking like years and years and years sponsors, you know. We're getting almost none of these days.
I just don't think so. So they were talking about that on Brett Giffen was talking about it. How there's no, like, I saw a TikTok clip, but he was like, you know, who was the sponsor for Daniel Suarez this week? And I forget who the other guy was, but he's like, I have no idea. And Griffin's point was, if NASCAR would give these teams more of the revenue sharing, that they could then make these deals with these. I disagree with that though, because they're going to do what makes them the most money. And this model of 5 different sponsors over a year makes them the most money.
Yes.
So they're not for the, I mean, you look at Ryan Blaney, I'm looking at next year's team chart. He has 7 different sponsors listed as main sponsors. There's no such thing as the continuous one sponsor anymore. It's just not a model in NASCAR anymore.
It's just not going to happen. What Brett says, it does make it easier, but I think it makes it easier to attract more, not just one main one. Right?
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah. So I kind of both agree. Like being able to cut a little bit of more of a deal if you're getting more of the revenue share helps, but what it helps is being able to attract multiple sponsors, not just one main one.
Yep. I'm kind of just going through.
Okay,
this.
so let's go to the non-racing side of things. What about this lawsuit, right? That 2311 has, and Front Row Motorsports.
What's the latest update on that?
They did not get they filed a preliminary injunction to be able to race as a chartered team next year while the case was going on under the next year charter agreement, and the judge denied that. So at this current time, they're going to have to race as open teams, Front Row Motorsports in 2311. They just filed
2311 and Front Row Motorsports just filed an appeal to that, to appeal that decision. And what I'm hearing, or what I read, is the reason the judge did not grant the temporary injunction is because 2311 and Front Row Motorsports did not show significant enough damages if they weren't running as chartered teams next year. So there's no need for the injunction. But to me, it's weird because clearly not making a race would be significant. If you don't make the Daytona 500, that's significant damages.
Right.
So, which also makes me question a lot of things. What are your lawyers doing then? How are you not showing potential significant damages? Because there's no guarantee you're making the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
And that is the most important. That's like the biggest potential revenue stream for you for the whole season, especially if you win that race. That is maybe because it's potential damages instead of actual, but like, I mean, that's huge. And then you talk about the sponsorship aspect of that comes with that. I guess those are already locked in, but your ability to sell more sponsorship. So it makes me question, like, what's their lawyer doing? What did the judge think? What's going on here? Because their lawyers supposedly, like I said this was the most slam dunk case of them all that he's done in all of sports litigation as far as antitrust lawsuits, essentially. So I don't know what's going on here.
And I'm not extremely up to date with it, but to me, that the first decision by the judge seems to me like NASCAR has a big upper hand now.
Yeah, I agree.
And, does this come down to, 2311 in Front Row just bowing to NASCAR and putting their tail between their legs? Yeah. But I don't know. Like, I could also see 2311 especially just saying fuck off,
Mm-hmm.
And would that happen? And one of the things that they said was, without a charter, without a guaranteed spot, like Reddick's contract says that he can leave.
Yep.
And I understand that, like, the language is in there, but then you also have to assume that Reddick would leave and that there would be a spot somewhere else for, like, I understand that it's there and that's why their lawyer mentioned it, but as far as, I'd be much more concerned if that language is in with your sponsors and then they back out, because it's so easy for sponsors to back out.
Yeah.
It's going to be. Do you know what the timeline is for all of this?
I know they're appealing it. Like I said, the injunction part. And look, I hope when they appeal, the appealing judge awards them a temporary injunction, because we know 2311 and Front Row Motorsports are very good for this sport. We also know that NASCAR keeps a lot of the money, and the teams are just trying to survive, right? And that's the whole deal with the sponsorships and stuff like that. That's why they need multiple sponsorships, is to be able to survive, and they barely break even, if that, in some cases. The charter's so valuable. Look at BJ McLeod, right? The Live Fast Motorsports. That was the value they had, and they sold it for, what was it, like $30 million or something? And now BJ McLeod exits ownership with $30 million in his pocket. Obviously not all going to him, but you get the point that they have a huge thing of tangible value. And now, right now, they don't have that. They being 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. And all these other teams have talked about how they felt compelled to have to sign the contract because NASCAR was sticking it to them or else type stuff. Well, 2311 and Front Row Motorsports are getting the or else treatment right now.
Yeah. And I don't think NASCAR cares enough that.
Nope. But I think it's bad for NASCAR. Who wants to see a 32 car field?
Right. But would they care?
Exactly. At what point does the car count matter? We already went from 43 to 40 36.
6, yep.
Where are we going? Right? IndyCar thrives on 27 car fields, which is an amazing number. I love the number 27. IndyCar thrives on 27 car fields. Is that where we're getting to with NASCAR? But when IndyCar had 18, 19 car fields, it was just trying to survive.
Right.
It was just trying to survive. The health of IndyCar is better. I wouldn't say it's exactly where we want it to be, but IndyCar is a different model as well of sport, of motorsport. But it is in a much healthier spot than it was a decade ago, that's for sure. And it's still got some ways to go. There's still some changes, but there's no doubt the health of IndyCar is way better than it used to be. But NASCAR, I worry about the health of the sport. I worry it's going in the wrong direction, I should say.
I do and I don't, just because I know a lot of people are going to be mad at where it's going with streaming and everything, but to me, that is a good growth opportunity.
That part doesn't bother me.
That's how I look at it, is from that perspective, and bringing in that money. I think NASCAR is solid, but it's definitely not going to be good if 2311 leads the sport. I mean, that would be
in Promo Motorsports. I mean, they're a team that's been. I mean, they were a start and park team a decade ago or whatever at some points in time.
Yeah,
at some points in time, and they have done everything the right way.
Yep,
and have been loyal, hardworking. They deserve to be a part of NASCAR's future, and now they might not be.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm sure it's going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll know sooner rather than later.
Sure, we definitely will.
You got anything else?
What do we got for next year, right? Like, we got Harrison Burton's leaving.
Who's your final four for next year?
right. I was just say, like, Harrison Burton's leaving. We don't know Zane Smith's status. Hemrick's
SVG full time.
SVG is in. Allmendinger's back full time next year, I believe.
Ty Dillon, colleague number 10.
Oh my god, what in the fuck?
Justin Haley's driving 7 for Spire.
Yep. Spire's an interesting spot, right? Like, they have Haley, McDowell, and Hosfar. That's very interesting. Obviously, the only change there from the end of this year is McDowell for Zane, but the team has a lot of funding. Rodney Childers, crew chief for Justin Haley next year.
For some reason, I thought he was crew chief for McDowell. But you're right.
It looks like it's Travis Peterson. Yeah,
you're right. I'm very interested to see what Hosfar does next year. He was. I don't want to get too excited, but
the kid has speed, very fast, very, very fast. The question is, does he have long run speed? Because he always seems to fade at the end of races unless we get restarts.
Yep. Let's see. Priest going to the third RFK, probably, with Kroger as a sponsor. That's another sponsor move. Stenhouse lost Kroger. Riley Herbst's favored to drive a third 2311 car, but those plans could fall apart with this lawsuit.
Yeah, we're in an interesting spot. 2311 remains intact with John Hunter, Nemechek, Eric Jones, but that team, I mean, woof, right? Like, this year was not good for that team.
No.
They finished, as far as full-time drivers, 28th and 34th. Yes, Eric Jones missed 2 races, so he probably he might not have gotten ahead of Josh Berry there. Josh Berry was pretty far ahead of him. 63 points ahead, even though Eric Jones missed 2 races. So he could have, but he would have needed really good finishes, which it didn't seem likely. So 28th and 34th out of 34 full-time drivers. Not good.
And remember, they didn't want help from JGR or TRD, and I think that definitely showed this year. It'll be interesting to see if they improve at all next year.
That is a team we need to keep an eye on because we need to see if improvements are being made. We need to see where they may or may not be getting help, where Toyota may or may not be stronger just from an engine standpoint, because that team clearly doesn't have the resources right now as far as all the other stuff, the aero, the mechanical grip, those things. But an engine is still an engine, right? You can still get good engines from TRD. And we saw some spots where Toyota as a whole performed better, typically in the intermediates, right? This year, we saw even 2311 do well at the intermediates. John Hunter Nemechek to be fair, John Hunter Nemechek had a couple top 10s at shorter, flatter tracks, high tire wear, but 9th place at Vegas. We saw Eric Jones get his decent finishes at more intermediate type tracks as well. So it's just something we need to keep an eye on. Where will Toyota as a whole be good, and that'll help this Legacy Motor Club team thrive, and or will Legacy Motor Club themselves improve, even where maybe Toyota doesn't necessarily improve?
Mm-hmm. And I think I'd like to see them improve, but to me, I didn't see much improvement this season, so I'm not super encouraged that they're going to improve for next year. Cole Custer will be back next year.
That's a good
in the
one.
Cup Series, the Haas factory team.
Yep. I'm looking down the standings here, and I'm like, who finished the season strong? And I just, outside of Zane Smith, who's not going to be back, I don't really see anybody in terms of like the bottom of the standings. You know what I mean? Ryan Preece kind of finished the season strong. He had a good playoff run.
He did. He surprisingly.
Yeah. Now he goes RFK. Maybe that's a guy to watch. I don't know. Especially at certain tracks, right?
Do we think RFK Josh Berry's going to do anything in the Wood Brothers car?
That's a good question. How much Penske support do they get?
He's got to be better than Harrison Burton, right?
Right, but is he better than Matt DiBenedetto? Is he better than Paul Menard? Or is he just on that caliber? Or is he on Ryan Blaney's caliber? And what is the level of support Wood Brothers is getting from Penske? Those are all questions that are TBD, right? Because when Ryan Blaney was with Wood Brothers, it felt like he was being groomed for Team Penske.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't really seen that since. Trevor Bayne, right? Remember way back when his career started, he was running Wood Brothers, and they weren't running full-time then. So it didn't really feel like Trevor Bayne was being groomed for anything as far as, he ended up at RFK, but they didn't have a plan then. But like the real plan was Ryan Blaney. But Paul Menard wasn't being groomed for Penske. He's an older driver. Matt DiBenedetto wasn't being groomed for Penske. He was like a guy that shot up having some good runs on smaller teams, but was never destined for Penske.
Right.
So it's tough to say, right? Like, but Josh Berry's also another veteran, older driver that he probably still has a year or two left where he's going to hit his peak just because this was his first full-time year, but he's also older. Josh Berry is 34 now, right? Or 30. Yeah, 34. He's 34. Like he's not going to get much beyond where he is now as far as a quality of driver. The only thing that's helping him is he'll have been in this car for another year or two, or in the series for another year or two. That could help him improve to maybe 35, 6, 7, 8. But then you start hitting the have you gotten too old deal.
Right.
So,
and like you said, it's not like it's a transition thing. He's in that car because SHR shut down.
Yeah. And he's not going to be a Team Penske driver in the future.
No.
They're not hiring him when he's 40 to drive for them suddenly. Team Penske, I'm saying. So, yeah.
What are your expectations for Briscoe in that 19? That is definitely an interesting one.
Oh, yeah. I'll say this. If he doesn't meet him in short order, he's probably toast. Joe Gibbs is not a very loyal organization.
Right.
Unless you're Ty Gibbs. We've seen a lot. They're not a very loyal organization.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Joey Logano, 3-time series champion.
Yep.
Look who they cut, Joey Logano. Eric Jones, Daniel Suarez, right? These guys, these young guys did not get their shots beyond a couple years. I don't know what to expect from Chase Briscoe. I feel like he's in the Eric Jones mold. He's much more experienced than when Eric Jones got to Joe Gibbs Racing, of course. So I expect him to do very well. But that doesn't mean he will. There could be struggles. There could be growing pains with that team. There could be growing pains with his driving style. He's a very aggressive driver. We know that. Obviously, there will be an improvement. He's going to better equipment, period. Right? It's just a question of, is he a championship contender or is he an Alex Bowman? Different from Bowman in that I think Chase Briscoe is more aggressive, will have more upside than Bowman, but in terms of just like season-long average, Bowman's is more consistent. You have a narrower band of ups and downs. Chase Briscoe could have higher ups and downs, I think.
Yeah, he's one of those where you could see him winning 2 races and you could see him winning 0. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been able to get a good read on Briscoe. I really haven't. So
he always excels at I would call the oddball tracks. You know, the short flats or the Darlington types or the homesteads or whatever. Occasionally some road courses. But like you just put him on a 1.5 miles and he's honestly, yeah. I've never really thought of him as like a contender at a 1.5 miles. Texas, only because of the weird nature of that 1.5 miles where it's got like track position deal, tire, repave, PJ1, all that weird shit that goes on. Charlotte, he's been competitive, but I'm talking like your Vegas, Kansas, but we don't get many Vegas, Kansas races anymore, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's tough to say. Chase Briscoe's a guy, like you said, tough to get a read on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be something to keep an eye on because obviously, it's a pretty good jump in equipment and see what that 19 team can do. He's
a guy you probably want to bet, coming out of the gates hot if books aren't adjusting.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's Daytona, Atlanta, Las Vegas, Phoenix, those kinds of tracks. Like, I don't care if they're not great tracks for him. He is upgrading his equipment.
Yep.
And yes, Daytona and Atlanta are tracks where equipment equalizes a little bit. We also saw Chase Briscoe was pretty good at some of these drafting tracks. He led a bunch of laps. Mm-hmm. And then Las Vegas is Las Vegas. If you just get the Toyota Magic at 1.5 miles, right? You get the Toyota Magic at 1.5 miles, right? I think we should, and Phoenix is an amazing track for him. I think we kind of have to come out of the gates firing on Chase Briscoe if books aren't adjusting. Mm-hmm. They probably will, though.
Yeah. Allmendinger's back full time.
Just to address it. Like, I'd rather bet Chase Briscoe firing on when the books haven't adjusted than when they do. He will eventually start winning, but the problem is books will start seeing the speed. It's like kind of what's happened with Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs didn't win this year, but we've seen Ty Gibbs has been capable of winning, and that's why he's like 12-1, 18-1 at some tracks now, whereas he had been 30, 40-1 to start the season at some of these places end of last year. We're not getting Ty Gibbs at 40-1, 30-1 outside of, Phoenix because the championship 4 are so heavy and a couple other tracks. But like your generic Las Vegas track or your generic whatever, Ty Gibbs is no longer 40-1, 30-1.
Because, they're seeing that upside and he's still not delivering.
But even though he's still not delivering, I still liked those prices at the beginning of the year. And I will like those prices at the beginning of the year with Chase Briscoe, I think. We'll see what my models say, of course, when I run them, because I'm going to be tweaking them I shouldn't say tweaking, overhauling them in the offseason. But just from a knowledge standpoint, right? Like Chase Briscoe is a guy that has high upside. Already won races, just won a race in the Stewart-Haas car that's going away. And now he's going to even better equipment. We know he's going to have race-winning upside.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen? One team that I'm curious to see how they, I want to say, bounce back is Trackhouse. So I feel like they took a step back this year.
Mhm.
Chastain, especially, Suarez got into the playoffs, but Suarez still didn't have that much speed either this year. A lot. There were some weeks there where both cars just looked lost. So it's going to be interesting to see if that team is able to bounce back. Um,
3-car
and
team
then if
now, yeah.
and then if RFK can get to I feel like we've been talking about this the last 2 seasons. If RFK can get to that next level, I
Mhm.
thought they were going to do it this year, didn't really happen.
I have a couple theories, and I mean, this is one that we see a lot. It's just as you get more and more time with the same car, the bigger teams just get more dominant.
Yep.
Right? We see it in IndyCar, we see it in NASCAR, we see it in F1. I mean, F1 changes every season though, but like there's been certain cases in F1 where when there hasn't been enough major changes in F1 that certain teams can just become more and more dominant. So I think next year is going to be that tier. It's going to be Hendrick, it's going to be Gibbs, Penske's going to be right there as they always are, and especially in certain tracks. But after that, it's okay. Who's fighting for that next tier? Is RFK getting there? Is Richard Childress getting there? Is Trackhouse getting there? Is Spire up and coming? Right. The battle, the
Front
real
row.
battle, comes outside of those big 3 or 4 teams.
23-11.
Well, I'm kind of lumping 23-11 in with GGR,
Yeah.
but like I'm talking about like, the teams we just mentioned: Trackhouse, RFK, RCR, maybe Spire. Where is that? And then the next part is, okay, what about the back half teams? Where's your colleagues versus potentially your Spires, your JGR, or sorry, not JGR, your JTGs is what I was trying to say. Front row, if they're even chartered, right? Like legacy, that sorting that. We all know Rick Ware is probably going to be at the bottom, but Rick Ware has made gains as well. Haas factory team, right? So it's sorting the second, third, and fourth and fifth tiers out. It becomes a little bit more of a blur. But I actually think the top 3 or 4 teams probably just get stronger unless we have some serious car changes coming or aero changes or those kinds of things, right? There was a few years there where in the Gen 6 car, especially before 2016 and before 2019, NASCAR made some very serious aero changes. They cut the spoiler and then they put the spoiler back and they changed the horsepower. If those kinds of major changes happen in the offseason, that'll shake things up. But if those don't, the bigger teams are just going to get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Stronger, I should say.
Yeah, the gap will just continue to widen.
Mm-hmm. That's what we're seeing in IndyCar right now. Penske and Ganassi are just as dominant as they've ever been in their most dominant eras in the past 25 years, 30 years. And it's because IndyCar has had the same car since 2018 now, right? And so they're getting on year 7, 8, that kind of stuff. And even though they've had the same car since 2018, they've really had the same car since 2012. It's mainly like the chassis part is mostly the same. It's a lot of the aero stuff that got tweaked between 17 and 18. And there was a kind of some wholesale changes there, but we're getting to the point where it's the Ganassi and Penske show again in IndyCar. Yeah, Andretti's hanging on. Yeah, Aaron McLaren's hanging on, but they're not winning races. They're kind of just that second tier team, and it's all Ganassi and Penske right now in IndyCar. We're getting to that direction in Cup where it's Hendrick, Gibbs, Penske, 23-11 counting as Gibbs, and yeah, you'll get the occasional win from other teams, but it's because they come at the more oddball tracks.
Yeah, I'm looking. So between between Hendrick and Gibbs and 23-11, they won 19 races this year.
Hendrick, Gibbs, 23-11, and then Penske, right?
Yeah, then Penske won 7. So
26 out of the 36 races.
Yep. Actually, no, there's one more. I forgot Bowman. So 27 of the 36.
If we go back to 2022, I mean, it seemed like everybody was winning races. Even last year, right? Like Kyle Busch won 3 races in an RCR car.
Yep. That was another noteworthy thing. Kyle Busch, first winless season in, 15 years?
Yeah, 19 years. Again, another guy that's on the decline, right? We talked about Hamlin. We talked about Truex.
39.
Getting there. Definitely has some years left in him where he could perform at his peak, but he's also with a team that, as we get longer into this car, maybe just the gap is widening to the big teams, and he's not on the big team right now.
Yep. You know what story we haven't heard anything about since it broke?
What?
The team that was selling secrets.
Ooh, yeah. There was a engineer that was selling secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that news broke and then nothing happened from it.
Because the FBI is investigating or something like that, right? Or the DOJ
Oh, really?
or somebody. I don't remember. Isn't that how it came about? Was FBI was investigating it and like raided the office of whatever team it was?
Oh, I don't remember that.
That's what I thought it was. Yeah. Here's NASCAR's statement. The FBI has completed its investigation at... Oh, no, that's... Never mind. That was not what I was looking for. Trying to... NASCAR acknowledged to AP it heard that one team with no cars in the playoffs paid the engineer cash in exchange for setup information. But yeah, I'm trying to Google whatever it was. Can't find it, but something's going to come of that, I would think. I just don't know what.
Yeah, it might be one of those things where once it all gets shook out, that's when we hear it. Oh.
Well, who's your pick to win?
Next year?
I don't know. It's filling the silence, the moment of silence there.
I don't even know. I'm not. Like I told you last week, this is now my off season, and I'm so like. I will say it was weird this week not searching all the apps for odds, going through and trying to find anything. Like that was a little weird.
A little weird,
but
obviously it declines for me during NFL season in terms of like my searching all the apps for odds and stuff. So it hasn't felt as weird. But I haven't done it at all, which is a little weird, right?
Yeah.
NFL season always changes things for me, but yeah, there's been no search in the apps for NASCAR, that's for sure.
Yeah. The good thing is Daytona will be here before we know it.
Oh yeah, it'll be here before we know it.
And we got what? The clash at Bowman Gray next year?
Yep. Bowman Gray. Guess we got to bet on Bowman, right?
New track, I'm betting Logano.
Yeah, exactly, right? That's a good point. Especially after what he did at North Wilkesboro.
Yep. All right. You got anything else? You ready to call it a season?
We gotta do our Final Four next year, right? Way too early Final Four.
Way too early Final Four?
Yeah.
I'm not picking Christopher Bell. I'll say that. I'm officially done betting on Christopher Bell. So far dead to me. He's not 6 feet under. He's 60 feet under.
I'm picking Christopher Bell. Picking William Byron. Picking Kyle Larson. Feels like you have to pick a Penske driver, right? Something tells me, though, there's going to be a shakeup next year. I don't know what the shakeup will be, right? Because it could be points. It could be, NASCAR talking about changing things. But I just feel like right now the best drivers in the series are Larson, Byron, and Bell. Like, all things considered, I think those are the three best drivers in NASCAR. Could you argue that?
I agree.
And they're on the biggest teams.
Yep. Yeah. They're good everywhere, and they're on the big teams. Byron,
And then
I saw a TikTok. What season is this for Byron?
6, I believe.
It seems like he hasn't been in this sport for very long, but I want to say it's like his 8th season.
Yeah, it was his 7th full-time season.
It doesn't seem like he's been here that long.
And he's 26, dude. Right, we're like Christopher Bell's gonna be like 30 next year.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the three best drivers in the sport are Larson, Byron, and Bell. So I'm gonna go with those three. And then I just got to pick some other random fuck. Feels like I have to pick a Penske driver, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna say Chris Buescher.
Wow, that's a
way too early pick.
I like
He's in his prime.
I like it. Yeah. I don't want to pick Bell, but I'm going to. And I think Larson gets in. Give me Blaney along with those two. And then how about Austin Cindric? No, I'm just kidding. Man. I'll tell you what. I'm going to go just out of left field. Bubba Wallace.
Let's go. We both kind of had an out of left field pick. I love it. Yeah. Buescher and Wallace. Two drivers that didn't even make the playoffs this year.
Right.
It's going to be hard as a non-chartered team.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Why I didn't pick Reddick or, obviously Bubba, but that's why I didn't even consider Reddick because of that. Worry about Hamlin's aging. Elliott I considered. Blaney, obviously, I considered. Logano, I considered. Bowman, I considered. But, like, Bowman just contract year for Bowman, right? Like, a lot of pressure on him.
Reddick,
Briscoe, I considered. Ty Gibbs, I considered.
This was Reddick's best year, right?
Yeah.
I'm interested to see if he's going to be able to keep up or improve and continue to improve.
I legitimately think a lot of this has to do with the charter situation.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying not to consider that, obviously, by picking Bubba. But yeah, that can and will shake everything up if anything happens there.
Go ahead.
Who's someone that doesn't really have a chance at making it to the Final Four, but you'd love to see make it to the Final Four?
I mean, obviously, Gilly Gang, right? Like,
absolutely.
That's the number one choice. As my favorite NASCAR Cup Series driver. But let's say somebody with a slightly more realistic chance. I would say one of the Trackhouse drivers, because obviously they can, right? Like Chastain did. And Suarez is capable if he wins the right races. And I think it would be good for the sport to have that. The other obvious one is Hosvar. I just don't like him. So, you said, do you want to? But yeah, that could make it in. I don't see a lot of drivers that could make it in outside of the playoff drivers this year: Buescher, Bubba, and
I
Ross.
say
And
your Buescher pick is solid. I like that.
I kind of like it a lot.
He is a very underrated driver.
He is. It's one of those, right? Like, there's a lot of change happening. Chase Briscoe is going to JGR. We don't know how that's going to go. Ty Gibbs is still Ty Gibbs. He's pretty young. Keselowski, like, I'm just looking at the playoff drivers this year. Keselowski, Suarez, obviously not Harrison Burton, Austin Cindric. Truex is retiring. Alex Bowman. Hamlin's getting older. And Chase Elliott's Chase Elliott. And then from there, you have the top 6 drivers, which are the 4 championship drivers. But, Logano kind of fluked into it this year. And, Blaney or Reddick could have down years, especially. So it's like, once I got past the big 3, I could make excuses for Blaney not getting in there, Reddick not getting in there, Logano not getting in there, Elliott, Hamlin, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, Buescher just kind of fits the mold of a guy that could.
Mm-hmm.
Good everywhere, consistent everywhere. Maybe less upside, but he might be able to, chase Elliott his way in.
Yeah, I'm on the fence with, like, I think Hamlin, because of his age, I could see him, like, severely downturn.
Yeah.
And Chase Elliott, I don't know, I feel like he just keeps getting, just like taking steps back with each season. Or everyone else is taking steps forward and he's kind of just remaining the same.
Yeah, he's a weird one, right? Like, he won the championship in 2020, then he had 2 consecutive 4th place championship finishes while making, obviously, the finale. Then he got that injury. And he struggled after the injury. And this year he was fine, right? Like, there was times he led the championship, but it was just through, right? He didn't finish outside the top 20 for the first 19 races of the season. But it was a whole bunch of 11th to 18th place finishes and then a few top 5s and a win sprinkled in there in the first half of the season. Second half of the season was almost better, right? Like, he almost had more upside in the second half of the season, but he also had more downside. Like, he became more aggressive. So I don't know. I can see him going either way.
The fact of the matter is, over the last 2 years, he has 1 win.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Now, obviously, like you said, he had that injury last year, but...
Right. Yeah, I took him over 1.5 wins this year, and he did not deliver. It was at a good price, though. Like, I felt like I was getting good money on my 1.5. I don't know.
Well, I do know that it's going to be fun watching this thing unfold. And
this offseason is going to be something.
It is. It is.
Will there be rules changes for NASCAR? Will there be car changes as far as, like, aero and engine and all that stuff? Tires? Will there be 2311 Front Row Motorsports drama in the court system? Still some driver and team crew chief stuff to figure out.
I think we're all, like, you remember the years where, like, 1 or 2 drivers maybe moved around. We got a lot of drivers moving around.
Yeah. Heck, coming into 2023, we had very little movement.
Yeah.
Just a little bit in the back marker teams. But yeah. Well, and then you also remember the years where pre-next gen, where it was the big 3, right? That's how the whole big 3 joke started. It was just Truex, Busch, and Harvick just winning everything.
Busch? There's Hamlin.
Kyle Busch? No, I'm talking about, like, 2016,
2014
to 2017. It was Kyle Busch, Truex, and Harvick were winning everything. That's where the whole big 3 thing started from. Because Hamlin had those down years, as you were pointing out. He struggled a little bit in that early Gen 6 era. Hamlin won one race in 2014. He won one race in 2013. 2 races in 2015, and he had his winless year in 2018, right? So like from 13 to 18, he had 2 or 3 1-win years, a 2-win year, and a 0-win year in the early next gen era, or in the early Gen 6 era. 19, once they changed things up in 19, 20, and 21, he was good again. And then obviously in the next gen era. But I'm talking like 2013 to 18, it was like the big 3. And it seemed like Truex, Harvick, and Kyle Busch won almost everything those years. Especially after Jimmy got a little too old.
Mm-hmm.
And especially after Carl Edwards retired.
Wouldn't that be fun? That would be like the ultimate. Carl Edwards comes back 2025. I'm waiting for like news like that to break. I want some out of nowhere.
That would be wild.
That would be fun.
I'm still waiting to see what happens with Truex for Daytona, right? I mean, Denny said he's got to ride whenever he wants it, but given the whole court system thing, what happens?
Well, and then Denny made a comment last week at Phoenix, TBD on whether they're going to be at Daytona.
Yeah, no, I know. It's a mess.
Well, we'll have more information soon.
We sure will.
But I don't got anything else. You got anything else?
No, another good season. Congrats on your 36 for 36 victory.
Oh,
the final tally was 965 to 891. You won by 74 points. I did close the gap by 1 point at Phoenix.
Damn,
yeah,
I finished strong.
We'll have to figure out like a way to have people submit it to do this next year. And like you said, before practice qualifying and the after practice qualifying versions.
Yeah, we'll do that next year. I want to do the DraftKings thing next year as well, where we do a lineup before practice and qualifying.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Yeah, we'll see if we'll see what we can get put together, but I'm sure we can figure out something. But
wait, hold on. Who's our picks to win Phoenix?
Yours was Blaney, who finished second. So you finished the last 5 races of the season. You did not pick anybody that finished worse than 4th, but you did not pick a winner.
Wow.
And I went on a epic run of not picking a winner. The only winner I picked this year was Hamlin in the first Richmond race. And I had Reddick at the Phoenix finale. Average finishes this year, you were at 10.19 and I was at 13.17.
Nice.
But like I said, your last 5 weeks, second, fourth, third.
It's pretty good.
It's decent.
An average finish of 3.0.
Yeah. And you had 4 winners on the year. Byron at Daytona, Larson at Kansas, Bell at New Hampshire, and Larson at Indianapolis.
That's pretty good. 10% win rate, ballpark.
Same amount of wins as Joey Logano.
Hey,
mediocre. You are a champion. Oh shit. But yeah. Thanks everybody that listened all season. We'll be back.
2.5 seasons down, right? We started halfway through a couple seasons ago, I think it was.
Was it 2.5 seasons? Or has it been 3? I don't even know.
3.5 seasons. Might be. I don't know. I feel like it's...
I should probably look that up.
Yeah. I'm going to have to Google that. Or not Google. Twitter search it. When was the first time I ever tweeted stacking Dennys? Because I remember I tweeted you like the name suggestion. It was when Denny Hamlin and Corey LaJoie were beefing. 2021 we were doing it. For sure. So 21, 22, 23, 24. There it is. I found the tweet. June 14th, 2021.
Yeah, so we did it 22, 23. Yeah, so 3.5 years.
3.5 years now.
Damn.
Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun.
I'm gonna have to go back I'd love to know how many hours we have put into talking
Yeah.
on this show.
I just dropped the original tweet into our chat here on our recording program. If I start a podcast, what should I call it? And I say Stacking Dennys. And you're like, oh, and PJ's like, that's freaking good. And Cocktail Christie's like, amazing. So, the crew.
Yep.
Somebody responded the Jim Hunter Sucks podcast.
That's funny.
That was pretty funny.
Oh, shit.
Good deal. Well, congratulations on another fun season. And I'm ready for season 4.5 and 5 or whatever you call it.
Yep. We'll be back.
Absolutely.
As always, thanks Luvabella for sponsoring us, as well as Brew Kettle.
Best in the business.
Absolutely. I don't got anything else.
I don't either.
I'm ready for the off season.
We'll have to do a preview episode at some point, but that's not gonna be till January or something.
Yep. We'll talk to you guys after the new year. We'll
Absolutely.
be back.
Happy holidays, everyone. And we'll see you next year.
See ya.